Welcome back to another FPL video and podcast for Gameweek 30. This will be the final team selection where I delve into my updated transfer plans. If you want to see my original ideas and also my Gameweek 29 review, then check out the original team selection video and podcast. And there's much more content that I produce for Gameweek 30, such as the transfer tips videos and also the wildcard teams that are also designed for those free hitting in Gameweek 34 and those without the free hit chip. All of that is taken into account, and there will be the deadline stream on Saturday. Be sure not to miss it. There's a quick turnaround for the Gameweek 31 deadline, and the plan is to still get out content despite the fact that I will be on holiday. Smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's get this video to the 200 likes on YouTube and on Spotify and Amazon Music. Be sure to follow me on those platforms and leave a 5-star review. There's also links to my Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and Drafthound. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Last week I discussed the possibility of changing my goalkeeper amongst other things, but I'm sticking with Areola for the time being. I think Newcastle are slightly more likely to keep a clean sheet and to win the match, but Areola has a far higher ceiling and I'm expecting both teams to score, so then I'm kind of counting on bonus points, saves and potential penalty saves, and Areola has been phenomenal this season for his price point. He does blank a lot, but he has those 5 or 6 games really for the season where he gets a double-digit return, and if he's on your bench, you're kind of kicking yourself about not starting him. But ultimately, I'm not expecting much from Dubravka or Areola, and I'm going for the Frenchman this week. My defence needs improvement in the long term, but Pedro Porro is a solid option in Gameweek 30 against Luton Town at home. I honestly think Luton Town will probably score in this game, but Pedro Porro has the attacking potential, as we all know. It has diminished somewhat in the last couple of months, especially with Maddison returning from injury, but I firmly believe the Spaniard is going to get some good points from now until the end of the season, particularly in the double game weeks around 36 and 37, and also with these better fixtures like Luton Town in Gameweek 30 and also Nottingham Forest in a couple of weeks' time. And Drafthound have him at 6 expected points for Gameweek 30, and I'd probably rank him as one of the top 5 defenders, and he could make a very good option in FPL Challenge as well. My second defender is Zabani, and in my initial team selection I talked about buying Bradley for Alfie Doughty and benching Zabani, but I'm quite open to starting Zabani regardless against Everton at home. I don't trust Bournemouth defensively, but Zabani has been quite decent in recent weeks from an FPL perspective, and I'm also looking at the alternatives in the defence, and I like Gusto, but because I don't have the free hit to use in Gameweek 34, I don't want to really buy him. I instead want to focus on those teams and players that are doubling in Gameweek 34, and I wouldn't go for another Arsenal defender away to Manchester City. Then I look at Liverpool defenders. I would go to Van Dijk, but I don't have enough money to go from Alfie Doughty to Virgil van Dijk, so maybe I have to be a bit more creative or go for a different avenue, and it could require selling Nathan Ake, but Man City have great fixtures, and if I do wildcard around Gameweek 35, as I discussed in my chip strategy guide and transfer plans video, it still wouldn't rule out the fact that I would be selling Nathan Ake when he has some plum fixtures in Gameweek 32, 33 and Gameweek 34. And speaking of which, that's my final defender for Gameweek 30, Nathan Ake at home to Arsenal. I'm not expecting a clean sheet here, but in terms of Ake versus Saliba, I'm going to pick Man City and Ake as they are at home, and Man City have a good historical record against Arsenal in the last couple of seasons, although the Gunners have beaten them on 2 occasions this season in the Community Shield and the Premier League at the Emirates, but both of them were very tight games. They could have gone either way, and it could be the same thing at the Etihad, but I would give them the advantage due to their experience and also their winning mentality. So that's my backline. It doesn't look particularly great. I could still go for Connor Bradley and sell Alfie Doughty, and it would require one of Zabani or Nathan Ake dropping to the bench. The midfield looks much better, with Heung-min Son being a prime captaincy option, and he'll probably be the template pick for the armband, just like he was in the reverse fixture when Spurs won 1-0 against Luton Town after Basuma was sent off. Shortly afterwards, Mickey van der Ven put them ahead, and it was Maddison getting the assist. But the way Luton Town are defending, all their injury problems, Ogbene has now been added to the list. I think Spurs could easily score 3 or 4 past them, and it could be a high-scoring game. I'm expecting Luton Town to score, but I also think they'll leak so many chances, and Spurs will want a bit of revenge or a bit of a redemption after their awful performance against Fulham where they got absolutely battered in Gameweek 29, and Heung-min Son for me is definitely in the top 3 for the captaincy. The next midfielder is Cole Palmer, who's also in that top 3 list, and it's between these two for my setup for the captaincy. But if you have Mohamed Salah, I'd highly recommend him at home to Brighton. And those are the three you really want to look at for the captaincy, at least on paper, of course, because you never know. You sometimes get these surprise packages like Manice against Tottenham last week. My last two midfielders include Anthony Gordon at home to West Ham, and next week it will be Everton at home. So that's back-to-back home games for Anthony Gordon, and typically that spells points. He has an incredible record at St James's Park, as we all know, and Anthony Gordon is an underrated pick on the wild card. Newcastle will double in Gameweek 37, but their fixtures throughout the rest of the season are incredible, and they're right up there in the fixture difficulty rating. My final midfielder is Phil Foden, and it does mean I'm still benching Bukayo Saka. That is a difficult decision because he's been the best player in FPL in this calendar year, but I would rather go for Foden and Manchester City, and I'm also quite happy with my front three, but of course, benching Saka could backfire. I am aware of that, and it's not completely set in stone, but I'm looking at these midfielders and my forward line, and I do think Saka is slightly worse this week. This could be the final time I own Ollie Watkins for the rest of the season, and he's facing Wolves at home. I would not sell him in Gameweek 30, as I made clear in my original transfer tips video and podcast, but selling him in Gameweek 31 or 33 when Aston Villa face visits to Man City and Arsenal. I think that's a better time to sell him, but there are some good fixtures sprinkled in between, like Bournemouth at home. You've also got the likes of Brentford, who are really struggling this season, and Watkins can do well against anybody, of course, but I do think Watkins is a must-hold for Gameweek 30, but in the long term, when you look at the sacrifices you might need to make to optimize your bench boost in Gameweek 37 or buying back the likes of Salah, I think Watkins is probably the cash cow and the one you want to downgrade to make that possible. My second forward is Dominic Solanke, who is 100% ready and fit according to Iraola in his recent press conference on Thursday, so I'm quite optimistic about Solanke in general, and I think he's definitely worth considering on the wildcard still up until Gameweek 35, and that's when you could sell him to Rasmus Højlund or the likes of Isak. And I know a lot of people are gravitating towards Darwin Núñez, but he's 2 yellow cards away from suspension, and if he gets those 2 yellows before Gameweek 33, that would result in a 2-game ban for Darwin Núñez, and the same goes for any player at risk of suspension due to accumulation of yellow cards. But for me, in terms of forwards, apart from Erling Haaland, I'd say Solanke is the second best forward to own in FPL up until Gameweek 35. And of course, the last forward is Erling Haaland at home to Arsenal. He might still be captained by many FPL managers, but I'm not going to do so this week. He did extremely well this time last year against Arsenal. It was one of his most complete performances in a Man City shirt, but the next 2 games against Arsenal have caused a lot of problems for Man City and Erling Haaland, who produced exactly 0 XG in one particular match. But this starting 11 looks decent. I think the defensive line is the weakest part by far, and there's no Mohamed Salah, so there's definitely a few holes in there, but it could be enough for a green arrow, especially if I get the captaincy and substitutions spot on. The 2 benching dilemmas which could result in some problems for Gameweek 30 include Dubravka. I think him versus Areola is always a difficult decision, and you don't really expect anything from either goalkeeper most game weeks, but Areola has the higher ceiling, and Dubravka this week has the better chance of a clean sheet. And benching a player of Saka's quality, and I'd say the same thing about Palmer, Foden, Haaland, etc., it's always difficult, and that's another key decision that could either be a masterstroke or an absolute disaster. But I'm very comfortable benching Doughty and Saliba this week. If I make that defender transfer, which I discussed in the previous team selection edition, and I buy Bradley, it would mean Zabani or Ake drop to the bench, and Zabani has the better fixture, but Ake plays in a much better defence, and it wouldn't surprise me if Arsenal didn't score at the Etihad. It could be a very tight game like it was at the Emirates, decided by very fine margins indeed. But in terms of the captaincy, I'm still going for the same thing, and that's Heung-min Son with the armband, and Palmer is my vice. Ollie Watkins is another consideration, and you can't rule out the likes of Haaland in any game week, but Anthony Gordon is actually a decent shout. He always returns at St James's Park pretty much, but I think Son and Palmer have the highest ceiling this week. And the closer we get to the deadline, the more tempted I am to switch to Cole Palmer, especially if Heung-min Son is the overwhelming captaincy favourite, and I want to go for something a little bit different and go against the crowd, because this season, template captaincy picks haven't been the greatest compared to previous campaigns. So that's my starting 11 at the moment, with no transfers being made, but if I were to make one, it would be in the heart of the defence, and I'd be looking at Connor Bradley. But my Gameweek 31 plans haven't changed so much. The only key difference is that if I save the transfer, Salah and don't buy Connor Bradley, I could actually get Salah in for free instead of taking a -4 hit. There is a link to Drafthound in the description below. Be sure to check it out. They have so many tools at your disposal as a pro pay tier member, and they are suggesting to sell either Areola or Dubravka to Kelleher. And in terms of the starting 11 and the captaincy, it's quite similar to what I've gone for, but the key differences are that they recommend Dubravka over Areola in Game Week 30, and also to put Saliba ahead of Doughty in the pecking order for the bench. The captaincy and vice captaincy is the same, and in terms of player rankings, which is my favorite tool that Drafthound have to offer, they've got Son at the very top for expected points. Palmer and Salah make up the top three. I personally put Salah at the very top, but that's just my own opinion. They've also got Maddison, Haaland, Watkins, Richarlison, Pedro Porro and Kelleher all right up there for expected points this week. And it's also quite favourable in terms of my squad. 70.2 expected points is quite high. The average ownership is very high there as well at 31%. But there are so many tools at your disposal with Drafthound. You can check out predicted lineups, also player comparisons, the player scouting tool to identify the best differentials, and much more. So be sure to check out Drafthound. There is a link in the description below. And now let's head over to fpl.team to show you my Game Week 31 provisional transfers. In my chip strategy guide and transfer plans video and podcast, I talked about all of my transfer plans up until Game Week 38 and when I'm planning to use the bench boost and the wildcard. And just to kind of sum it up, my current plan is to wildcard in 35, and that allows me to get a full 50-man squad of doublers in Game Week 37. It's all provisional. Some things are up in the air. There are a few changes that I could make to my squad by then, and I have plenty of time to think about things. But in the meantime, I could get to 9 double Game Week players in 34 without using a single hit, and I could even get to 10 players or 11 with just a -4 or a -8 hit. But in Game Week 31, I could go for Dubravka in goal at home to Everton, a back three of Saliba, Ake and Zabani, but that could easily become Bradley and taking a -4 hit if I decide to make that transfer this week. Gordon, Foden, Palmer, Salah and Saka as the midfield 5 with Haaland and Solanke up front, and it would require selling Watkins and Son to buy Salah back. And I would also buy Manice, who'd be first on my bench. Then I've got Doughty and Pedro Porro completing that bench alongside Areola. And the expected points is very high for FPL.team standards. And I'd have 2 million in the bank for future moves as well. And that's where I could buy the likes of Virgil van Dijk into my FPL team by double Game Week 34. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Would you buy Connor Bradley this week if it means taking a -4 hit to buy back Salah in Game Week 31? Would you sell Son and Watkins to buy Salah back, or would you find another way, or maybe go without Salah at home to Sheffield United? I'd be very intrigued to see all of your thoughts, but I think Salah is essential in Game Week 31, and he's very close to that in Game Week 30. He's one of my favourite options from now until the end of the season. You could make a case for selling him around Game Week 35 or 36 if you are bench boosting in Game Week 37. Otherwise, just keep Salah for the rest of the season. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes and let's keep on pushing towards 23k subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, Drafthound, and Spotify and Amazon Music. Follow me on those platforms, leave a 5-star review. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. And my plan is to give 5 to 10 memberships in the upcoming deadline stream. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 30 and the rest of the season. And I'll see you next time.